A study from University of California found that people who constantly give without limits are twice as likely to struggle with anxiety and emotional exhaustion. Think about that. Your kindness, the very thing that makes you beautiful, can become the very thing that breaks you when it falls into the wrong hands. Not everyone deserves your kindness, and if you don't learn to protect your heart, you may spend your whole life pouring into people who never cared for you in the first place. Kindness is one of the most misunderstood treasures in the world. People speak of it as if it is something common, like loose change you toss into the hands of strangers without thought. But true kindness is not cheap, nor is it unlimited. It is sacred. It is a divine spark that lives inside the human soul, a reflection of the Creator Himself, who painted the universe with generosity and love. And yet, just like gold, kindness is valuable because it is rare, because it requires something costly from the giver: time, energy, and a piece of the heart. Think about the way a single act of kindness can shift the atmosphere of a room. A tired nurse who has worked 3 double shifts, when told, "You've made such a difference for me," finds strength to keep going. A lonely teenager who is invited to sit at a lunch table feels like life is worth living again. A stranger who hears the words, "I see you and I care," suddenly feels less invisible in a world that often feels blind. These moments are not small. They are massive. They are sacred. They are moments that prove kindness is not a simple courtesy. It is medicine for the human soul. But because kindness has this healing power, because it can resurrect what is broken in people, it must be treated with reverence. And yet most of us treat kindness as if it grows on trees, something to be spent without thought. We give it to people who trample it underfoot. We hand it out to those who see our softness not as strength, but as weakness to be exploited. We do not always remember that kindness, just like our health, our time, or our money, is not infinite. When you spend too much of it on the wrong people, you deplete yourself, and when your well runs dry, even those who truly deserve your compassion will find nothing left in you to draw from. C.S. Lewis once reflected on love in a way that deeply ties into this truth about kindness. He said that to love at all is to be vulnerable, to hand someone the keys to your heart and risk them shattering it. Kindness is the same. Every act of kindness is a form of vulnerability. When you extend it, you're giving away a piece of yourself without a guarantee it will be valued. That is why it is holy. It is always an offering, never just a transaction. And like any sacred offering, it cannot be tossed to those who have no respect for it. There's also a psychological weight here that science makes very clear. Studies from psychology journals have shown that people who engage in constant people-pleasing behaviors, always giving, always bending, always being kind at the expense of their own peace, suffer higher levels of depression and anxiety. Their immune systems weaken, their cortisol levels spike, and their mental resilience breaks down. Think about that. The very act that should bring joy and connection can, when misplaced, break the giver. Kindness given without discernment becomes poison to the soul. But let us not make the mistake of seeing kindness as weakness. True kindness is fierce, is strength under control. It is the ability to strike, but choosing to heal instead. Is the lion laying down with the lamb, not because the lion has lost its power, but because the lion has chosen peace. In your own life, when you are kind to someone who needs it, you are not showing fragility. You're showing a mastery of your emotions, a dominance over your pride, a refusal to be hardened by the cruelty of the world. Kindness is not the absence of power. It is the highest use of power. The divine echoes of kindness cannot be ignored either. In Scripture, there is a verse that says, "Be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other, just as God forgave you." Kindness is not just a moral choice. It is a divine imitation. It is you becoming a mirror of heaven on earth. Every time you choose kindness, you are whispering to someone's spirit that they matter, that they are not forgotten, that they are loved beyond their failures. And yet, this command does not mean to let people abuse your soul. Even Jesus, who embodied kindness, spoke sharp words to those who corrupted innocence and exploited others. He washed the feet of his friends, but he also overturned the tables of those who used the temple for greed. This shows us the truth. Real kindness has balance. It is gentle where gentleness heals, but is also firm where boundaries are needed. Look around at the world today, and you will see how hungry people are for kindness. Social media is filled with noise, judgment, and cruelty. Strangers walk past one another with cold eyes, heads buried in screens, rarely lifting their gaze to see another soul. And yet, when a simple video goes viral of someone doing something kind, a man paying for another family's groceries, a child hugging a lonely classmate, millions of people stop, watch, and share it. Why? Because kindness is the food every soul is starving for, whether they admit it or not. But here is the sobering truth. Because the world is starving for kindness, there are wolves who will feed on it. They will seek out those with soft hearts, those who cannot bear to say no, those who constantly pour, and they will drink them dry. This is why your kindness must be protected. A farmer does not scatter seeds on concrete because no life will grow there. He plants them in fertile soil where his labor and his love will produce a harvest. So too must you be discerning with your kindness. When given to the wrong soil, it produces nothing but emptiness. But when placed in the right soil, it can grow a forest of healing and hope. Kindness is not only divine and emotional, it is also biological. Neuroscientists have discovered that when you perform an act of kindness, your brain releases oxytocin, the so-called love hormone. Your blood pressure drops, your heart rate steadies, your stress lowers. Acts of kindness are literally healing to the giver, not just the receiver. Yet the opposite is also true. When kindness is rejected, exploited, or ridiculed, the brain feels betrayal, the same pain as physical injury. This is why misplaced kindness feels so crushing, because your body and mind register it as a wound. This truth alone should remind you that kindness is not a casual thing. It is your life force in action, and it must be guarded. There are countless stories of those who learned this truth too late. A generous mother who gave everything to an ungrateful child who never grew up, only took and left her in loneliness. A kind-hearted man who kept helping a toxic friend until the weight of their problems sank his own life. A leader who forgave and forgave and forgave until the very people he trusted betrayed him again. Their lives remind us that kindness without wisdom is not virtue. It is vulnerability turned into a weapon against the self. But here is the hopeful side. When you choose wisely, when you give your kindness to the right people, it multiplies. It doesn't drain you, it fills you. The mother who pours into her child who grows to be loving and strong sees her kindness bloom into generations. The friend who stands beside someone truly willing to change sees their kindness shape transformation. The stranger who offers a word of encouragement to a person on the edge of despair may one day hear, "Your kindness saved my life." That is the power of kindness. When it is given with discernment, it becomes eternal, echoing far beyond the moment. So I tell you today, treat kindness as the treasure it is. Do not cheapen it by scattering it recklessly. Do not let the world trick you into thinking it is weakness. Do not allow manipulators to drain it from you until you are empty. Instead, carry it like a torch, lighting up the paths of those who truly need it, those who will carry the flame forward, those who will treasure the warmth it gives. Protect your kindness the way you would protect your heart, because in truth, they are the same. Your kindness flows directly from your heart, and when your heart is guarded, your kindness has the power to heal the world without destroying you. There is a danger hidden inside the beauty of kindness, a danger so subtle that most people never see it until it has already cost them years of peace, energy, and sometimes their very sense of self. Misplaced kindness is not just harmless generosity, it can be a slow erosion of the soul. The tragedy is that the people who are most at risk of this are often those with the most beautiful hearts. The givers, the nurturers, the ones who cannot bear to see others in pain, even if it means carrying that pain themselves. Think of the friend who always says yes. She stays up late to help with homework, to comfort someone who never asks how she's doing, to lend money she doesn't have. At first, people admire her. They call her selfless. But as the months and years go by, she feels the weight pressing down. No one notices that her smile has grown thinner, her shoulders lower, her laughter quieter. Her kindness has been misplaced, and instead of being her crown, it has become her chain. There are countless people who wear those chains. They are the workers who always pick up the shifts nobody else wants, while their colleagues walk away early. They are the sons and daughters who keep bailing out family members who never change, always rescuing but never seeing transformation. They are the friends who always forgive, even when forgiveness is used as a ticket for someone to hurt them again. These are not stories from faraway lands. They are the silent battles happening in homes, schools, offices, and neighborhoods across America every single day. Misplaced kindness is dangerous because it feels noble at first. You convince yourself that being endlessly available makes you a better person, that giving until you collapse is proof of love, that being used is the price of being good. And yet science, psychology, and wisdom tell us a darker truth. When kindness is poured into people who only take, the giver does not just lose energy, they lose identity. Their boundaries dissolve, their self-respect weakens, their mind begins to live in a cycle of guilt and exhaustion. Studies in psychology call this compassion fatigue, and it is devastating. Nurses, caregivers, and parents experience it the most, but no one is immune. It is the slow draining of life force until even acts of kindness feel empty, robotic, joyless. The danger lies not only in exhaustion, but also in distortion. Misplaced kindness teaches others to expect what they do not deserve. A friend who constantly borrows money without paying back will keep asking as long as you keep giving. A coworker who avoids responsibility will keep leaning on you until you collapse. A partner who manipulates your softness will keep repeating patterns as long as you keep forgiving without consequence. In this way, your kindness stops being kindness at all. It becomes permission for harm. It becomes a signal to those who exploit others that your heart is an open door with no lock, no guard, no wisdom protecting it. C.S. Lewis spoke about this when he wrote of love without truth. He said love that does not confront lies or injustice is not real love, but sentimentality. Kindness without wisdom works the same way. It is not true compassion, it is a distortion of compassion. By pouring kindness where it is wasted, you rob yourself of the chance to pour it where it could actually heal. You let it flow into deserts where nothing grows, instead of gardens where fruit could flourish. Think of it this way. If a farmer kept pouring all his water into cracked, dry soil that never produced crops, while his other fields went thirsty, would you call him wise? No, you would say he was careless with his resources. And yet so many of us do the same with our kindness. We give endlessly to those who mock, ignore, or exploit it, while those who quietly need it, our children, our true friends, even our own souls, are left thirsty. That is the true cost of misplaced kindness. It starves the places where your love was meant to grow. Science reveals another cost. When people constantly give without boundaries, their brains begin to rewire in damaging ways. Cortisol levels rise as stress becomes chronic. The nervous system shifts into survival mode, always on alert because deep down the person knows they are being drained but feels powerless to stop it. Over time, this leads to anxiety disorders, weakened immune systems, and even heart problems. Misplaced kindness is not just an emotional problem, it becomes a physical danger. Your body pays the price for your inability to guard your heart. And yet, the deepest wound of misplaced kindness is not physical, it is spiritual. When you give and give without discernment, you start to forget your own worth. You start to believe that you exist only to serve, not to live. You begin to see your life not as a sacred journey with purpose, but as a never-ending well for others to draw from. You become like a candle burning at both ends, beautiful for a moment, but destined to vanish too soon. And the saddest part is that those who truly loved you, who would have treasured your light, will be left in darkness because you gave it all to those who never valued it. There is a story told often in psychology circles about the oxygen mask principle. On airplanes, passengers are always told, put on your own oxygen mask before helping others. The logic is simple. If you faint from lack of air, you cannot save anyone else. Misplaced kindness ignores this principle. It tries to put oxygen masks on everyone else while suffocating. And at first, it feels noble. But suffocation is still suffocation, no matter how noble the reason. If you lose yourself, you lose the very kindness the world needed most. This is why misplaced kindness is so dangerous. It deceives you into thinking it is virtue, when in truth is self-destruction. It is like giving away pieces of your heart until nothing is left beating inside you. It is like pouring water into broken cups while your own thirst is ignored. It is like forgiving someone 70 times 7 not because they are changing, but because you are afraid to draw a boundary. That is not mercy. That is slavery. The divine call is different. Scripture teaches, guard your heart above all else, for it is the wellspring of life. To guard is not to be cruel. To guard is to protect what is sacred so it can keep flowing. Even Jesus, who embodied perfect love, walked away from crowds when they tried to drain him. He rested, he prayed, he set boundaries. He gave freely, but he gave wisely. His kindness healed the broken, but it never indulged the corrupt. That is the pattern we are called to follow. The truth is that not everyone who asks for your kindness deserves it. That may sound harsh, but it is reality. Some people want your kindness not to heal, but to control. Some want your forgiveness not to repent, but to repeat. Some want your loyalty not to cherish, but to exploit. If you cannot recognize this, your life will be filled with leeches who drink from your soul until nothing remains. The danger of misplaced kindness is that it turns you into prey in a world filled with predators. Yet there is hope. The moment you realize this truth, the moment you accept that kindness without boundaries is destructive, you can begin to change. You can learn to say no without guilt. You can learn to give to those who need it, not those who demand it. You can learn that protecting your kindness does not make you selfish, it makes you wise. When you give less to those who exploit you, you have more to give to those who will be changed by it. That is not cruelty, that is balance. There will always be people who do not understand this. They will call you cold when you stop rescuing them. They will accuse you of being unkind when you refuse to enable their behavior. They will try to guilt you, shame you, manipulate you back into their control. But remember this, their anger is not proof of your cruelty. It is proof of their dependency on your misplaced kindness. Let them be angry. Let them walk away. Better to lose those who exploited you than to lose yourself. There's a reason the ancient wisdom says, guard your heart above all else, for it is the wellspring of life. To protect your heart is not to be selfish, it is to be wise. Your emotional boundaries are not walls built out of cruelty, but gates built out of wisdom. Without them, your life becomes a field where anyone can walk in, take what they want, and leave footprints on your soul. With them, you are still open to love, to kindness, to generosity, but you are also strong enough to say no when no is needed. Too many people have been taught that setting boundaries makes them unkind. They are told from childhood that good boys and good girls always share, always forgive, always say yes. And so they grow into adults who cannot recognize the difference between love and exploitation. They confuse compassion with compliance. They confuse sacrifice with surrender. They confuse being needed with being valued. And then one day they wake up and realize they are exhausted, empty, and quietly resentful of the very people they thought they were helping. To protect your emotional boundaries means to honor your own humanity. You're not a machine built to pour out endlessly. You are flesh and spirit, fragile yet resilient, limited yet full of potential. You cannot give your best if you are constantly drained. When you say yes to everything, you are not being more loving, you are being dishonest with yourself. Every false yes is a betrayal of your own needs, and those small betrayals add up until you no longer recognize the face in the mirror. There is a cost to saying yes when you should have said no. The cost is your peace. The cost is your health. The cost is your identity. People often think boundaries are about keeping others out, but boundaries are really about keeping yourself whole. A fence does not only keep intruders away, it keeps the garden inside safe so that flowers can grow. Your soul is that garden. Your boundaries are the fence. Without them, weeds will take over and beauty will be lost. Imagine the parent who never rests, who never says no to their children's endless demands, who tries to be available every second of every day. At first, the children are happy. But as time goes on, the parent grows weary, their patience wears thin, their health deteriorates. What happens then? The children lose the best of that parent. They lose laughter, energy, joy. By never setting boundaries, the parent ends up giving less, not more. This is what happens to all of us when we refuse to protect our hearts. We believe endless sacrifice will help others, but in truth, it slowly robs them of the best version of us. Psychologists tell us that people who maintain strong emotional boundaries are healthier, more resilient, and more capable of deep relationships. This is because boundaries create clarity. When you know where you end and another person begins, you stop trying to carry what was never yours. You stop taking responsibility for everyone else's emotions. You stop apologizing for things that were not your fault. And once you do this, you have energy to love freely without resentment. There is a false idea that boundaries push people away. The truth is that boundaries reveal who truly values you. The wrong people will be offended by your no, but the right people will respect it. The wrong people will call you selfish for protecting your time, but the right people will be grateful that your yes actually means something. Boundaries sift your relationships, leaving behind only those who truly care for you. They are not barriers to love, they are filters that let real love through. Even faith itself honors boundaries. Look at creation. The seas have shores. The sun has a set time to rise and set. Even God rested on the seventh day. If the Creator Himself honors boundaries, why do we think we can ignore them? To protect your heart is to follow the rhythm of divine wisdom. Is to accept that love without limits is not love, is self-destruction. The science supports this too. When people say no to what drains them, their stress levels drop, their sleep improves, and their relationships grow stronger. Their brains actually begin to heal from the effects of constant overload. They experience what researchers call emotional recovery, a return to balance after seasons of exhaustion. Your brain and body are literally designed to thrive when boundaries are honored. It is not just a spiritual truth, it is a biological necessity. Protecting your emotional boundaries also means facing fear. Many people stay trapped in cycles of saying yes because they are afraid of rejection. They think if they say no, people will leave. And sometimes that is true. But here is the question. If someone only stays because you sacrifice yourself for them, do they really love you, or do they just love what they can take from you? Boundaries reveal the answer. And though it may hurt when people walk away, it is better to lose someone who never valued you than to lose yourself trying to keep them. There's a quiet courage in saying, "I cannot do this for you." It is not a rejection of the person. It is an acknowledgement of your limits. And limits are not weakness. Limits are truth. Pretending you have no limits only leads to bitterness. Accepting your limits leads to freedom. Freedom to give when you can. Freedom to rest when you must. Freedom to live your life with integrity. So many people walk through life carrying weights that were never theirs. They carry guilt for other people's choices. They carry shame for mistakes they never made. They carry anger that does not belong to them. Protecting your boundaries means setting those weights down. You were not created to carry the world. You were created to carry your own soul faithfully. And when you do, you are stronger, healthier, and far more capable of lifting others when the time is right. Think of the story of the shepherd. A good shepherd guards his sheep not by standing in the field all night with no rest, but by building a gate. The gate protects, the gate gives rest, the gate creates order. In the same way, you need gates for your heart. Without them, wolves will come. With them, you can rest, knowing your life is protected. That rest gives you strength. That strength allows you to keep showing up in love. Many people confuse boundaries with coldness. They think saying no means you don't care. But the opposite is true. When you say no to what drains you, you are able to say yes more fully to what truly matters. You give fewer people your attention, but you give those few the best of yourself. That is love in its highest form. Not scattered crumbs of attention, but a feast of presence for those who deserve it. Life without boundaries is noise. Life with boundaries is music. The pauses, the rests, the space between notes, that is what creates harmony. Your boundaries are the rests in the song of your life. Without them, everything is chaotic, exhausting, overwhelming. With them, everything has rhythm, beauty, meaning. Protecting your boundaries is not selfish. It is what makes your song worth listening to. There will be moments when protecting your boundaries feels uncomfortable. You will feel guilt, you will feel fear, you will feel misunderstood. That is natural, but growth is always uncomfortable at first. Seeds break before they sprout. Muscles ache before they grow strong. Boundaries will stretch you, but they will also heal you. And once you experience the peace they bring, you will never want to return to the chaos of saying yes to everything. The truth is this: your heart is the most precious thing you own. If you let everyone handle it carelessly, it will shatter. But if you guard it with wisdom, it will remain strong, beating with life, filled with kindness, ready to give in ways that transform others. Protecting your emotional boundaries is not about closing yourself off from the world. It is about keeping yourself whole so that you can keep shining your light without being extinguished. Kindness without boundaries is weakness. Kindness with boundaries is strength. Love without boundaries is slavery. Love with boundaries is freedom. To guard your heart is to guard your life. And when you guard your life, you are not just protecting yourself, you are protecting your ability to bless the world. There is a kind of kindness that heals, restores, and brings light into the darkest corners of the human heart. And there is another kind of kindness that masquerades as compassion but is really blindness. It looks noble on the surface, but beneath it is destruction. One gives life, the other quietly takes it away. The difference between the two is wisdom, and without wisdom, kindness can become one of the most dangerous forces in your life. Blind kindness is when you give without seeing the truth. It is when you forgive without change. It is when you confuse enabling with loving. It is when you cover wounds without treating infection. is when you smile while someone uses your heart as a doormat. Blind kindness is not noble, it is naive. And naivety can destroy more than cruelty ever could, because it wears the mask of goodness while it leads you into pain. Think of the parent who gives their child everything they ask for. At first, it looks like love. New toys, endless treats, no discipline. But what does that child grow into? They grow entitled, ungrateful, and unprepared for the real world. The kindness that was meant to nurture them has blinded the parent from what the child actually needed: boundaries, discipline, truth. The result is not love fulfilled, but love wasted. That is blind kindness. Or think of the person who keeps bailing out a loved one trapped in addiction. They give money, they cover debts, they make excuses. It feels like kindness, but it is really blindness. It does not heal the addict, it chains them deeper into their struggle. Because kindness without truth is not kindness at all, is complicity in destruction. This is what C.S. Lewis meant when he wrote that love without truth is not love, but sentimentality. To be truly kind is to see clearly. It is to look at a person and love them enough to face reality, not deny it. Blind kindness turns away from reality because it is uncomfortable. True kindness faces reality, even when it is painful. Blind kindness whispers, "Keep the peace at any cost." True kindness has the courage to disturb false peace for the sake of real healing. Blind kindness hands out second chances without accountability. True kindness says, "I forgive you, but I cannot allow you to keep repeating this." Blind kindness is afraid to say no. True kindness understands that sometimes no is the most loving word you can speak. There's also a deep psychological weight to this difference. Research shows that people who struggle with people-pleasing tendencies often mistake their actions for kindness. They say yes to avoid conflict, they sacrifice to gain approval, they keep quiet to keep the peace. On the outside, they look kind. On the inside, they are full of resentment, emptiness, and exhaustion. That is not kindness. That is blindness. Because kindness is supposed to come from strength, not fear. True kindness is rooted in love. Blind kindness is rooted in insecurity. Blind kindness is also destructive because it teaches others lies. When you reward someone's bad behavior with endless tolerance, you are teaching them that cruelty has no consequences. When you smile at disrespect, you are teaching that disrespect is acceptable. When you excuse betrayal over and over, you are teaching that betrayal has no cost. In trying to be kind, you are teaching others how to harm you. And worse, you are teaching them how to harm others too. There is a story told in ancient wisdom about a man who fed a serpent. The serpent was hungry, and out of pity, the man offered it food. But the serpent grew, and as it grew, it demanded more until one day, it bit the man who had kept it alive. That is the nature of blind kindness. It nourishes what will eventually destroy you. True kindness knows when to feed and when to starve what is dangerous. Kindness is meant to heal, to inspire, to lift. But when it is blind, it does the opposite. It enables weakness instead of building strength. It fosters dependency instead of freedom. It silences truth instead of speaking it. And in the silence, lives are lost, relationships are ruined, and souls grow weary. This is why kindness must never be blind. It must be discerning. It must be paired with wisdom, with courage, with truth. Even faith shows us this balance. Jesus healed the broken, fed the hungry, and embraced the outcasts with kindness. But he also confronted hypocrisy, rebuked exploitation, and overturned tables of corruption. His kindness was not blind. It was fierce, discerning, and holy. He knew when to give compassion and when to draw a line. That is the model of true kindness. Is not weakness dressed as goodness? Is strength wrapped in gentleness? Blind kindness also damages the giver. When you keep giving without wisdom, you lose yourself. You start to feel invisible. You start to feel that your worth only exists in how much you sacrifice. You begin to believe that love means pain, that kindness means silence, that loyalty means suffering. And when you believe those lies long enough, you become a shadow of yourself. You forget that kindness was never meant to erase you. It was meant to express you. Blind kindness is dangerous because it turns the most beautiful parts of your soul against you. Your compassion, your empathy, your willingness to forgive, all of these, when misused, become weapons in the hands of others. What should be your crown becomes your chain. What should make you shine becomes what makes you collapse. Blind kindness robs you of your joy, your energy, your strength. True kindness restores them. is not easy to break free from blind kindness. It requires courage to look at someone you love and say, "I cannot help you this way anymore." It requires strength to walk away when your heart wants to stay. It requires faith to believe that truth is more loving than lies. But if you want to live free, if you want your kindness to be life-giving instead of life-draining, you must choose courage over comfort. There is also a cost for society when kindness turns blind. A culture that refuses to confront wrong in the name of tolerance becomes sick. When justice is avoided in the name of peace, corruption thrives. When kindness is given without truth, it enables cycles of abuse, addiction, and exploitation. True kindness seeks justice. Blind kindness avoids it. And a society full of blind kindness is a society where the strong devour the weak while the kind smile in silence. The difference between kindness and blindness can be seen in the small choices we make every day. Do you comfort a friend by telling them what they want to hear, or do you love them enough to tell them what they need to hear? Do you forgive someone without expecting growth, or do you forgive and also call them higher? Do you say yes to please people, or do you say yes only when you mean it? Each choice shapes whether your kindness is healing or destructive. Kindness without blindness is not easy. It requires discernment. It requires honesty. It requires patience. But it is worth it, because when you love with truth, your relationships deepen. When you give with wisdom, your kindness multiplies instead of drains. When you stand firm in boundaries, your peace remains intact. True kindness does not just make others better, it makes you better too. Blind kindness, on the other hand, always ends the same way, in regret. Regret for the years wasted on people who never valued you. Regret for the energy poured into relationships that only took and never gave. Regret for the truth you never spoke because you were too afraid. Regret for the part of yourself you lost along the way. That regret is heavy, but can be avoided. All it takes is the courage to see clearly, to see truth, to see that not every request deserves a yes, not every tear deserves a rescue, not every apology deserves another chance. True kindness is powerful because it sees. It looks at the broken and says, "I will help you heal." It looks at the manipulative and says, "I will not let you use me." It looks at the weak and says, "I will lift you up." It looks at the strong who abuse power and says, "I will stand against you." That is kindness in its purest form, love in action, guided by truth. So ask yourself, is your kindness opening eyes, or is it closing them? Is it healing, or is it hiding? Is it lifting others, or is it enabling their fall? The answer will tell you whether your kindness is light or blindness. And remember this, kindness is sacred. It was never meant to be wasted in darkness. It was meant to shine. Protect it, guide it, let it be fierce, let it be wise, let it be true. Because when kindness walks hand in hand with truth, it does not just change people, it changes the world. Kindness is often seen as something spiritual, something deeply rooted in the soul, but it is also something measurable in the language of science. Every time you extend a hand of compassion to someone, your brain responds by releasing chemicals such as oxytocin, serotonin, and dopamine. These are the very chemicals that make people feel warmth, connection, and joy. They act like a natural medicine, lowering blood pressure, softening the stress that builds up in the body, and calming the storms of anxiety. In that sense, kindness is both a divine gift and a biological necessity because it strengthens not only the bonds between humans, but also the health of the one offering it. Yet science also teaches that when kindness is given recklessly, when it is poured into people who trample it without care, the same brain that lights up with joy begins to shift into patterns of exhaustion and fear. That is where selective kindness becomes a shield, not just for the soul, but for the body itself. Think of how the nervous system works. The human brain is constantly observing, predicting, and adapting. When you repeatedly show generosity to someone who responds with manipulation or indifference, your brain begins to notice the pattern. It tries to warn you by sending stress signals, releasing cortisol, raising your heart rate, and tightening your chest. It is as if the mind and body are whispering, "You are giving too much in a place that drains you." This is not weakness, it is survival. Neuroscience calls it neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself based on repeated experiences. If you repeatedly find yourself giving kindness where it is not valued, your brain wires that experience into a pathway of mistrust, teaching you subconsciously that giving is dangerous. That is why some people who once gave freely eventually closed themselves off to everyone. They were not born cold. They were taught through repeated wounds that kindness can hurt. Psychology reinforces this truth through the study of boundaries. Researchers have long observed that individuals who cannot say no often struggle with high levels of depression and fatigue. It is not the act of giving that hurts them, it is the inability to recognize where giving must end. In America, where people often equate being polite with being endlessly available, this becomes even more dangerous. A teenager may feel pressure to always help friends with homework, even when exhausted. A mother may feel obligated to serve every demand of her children, even when her health cries out for rest. A man at work may constantly cover extra shifts to please his boss, all while his family misses him at the dinner table. Each of these acts is rooted in kindness, but science shows that when kindness comes without boundaries, it leads to burnout, and burnout is a condition as real and damaging as any physical disease. Spiritual wisdom and scientific evidence meet at the same point here. Scripture says, "Guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it." Scientists say, "Protect your mental health, for all behavior is shaped by it." Both are speaking the same language in different ways. The truth is that your heart, your brain, your nervous system, all are sacred instruments. They are not meant to be sacrificed endlessly at the altar of other people's demands. Selective kindness is not cruelty, it is stewardship. It is the careful management of your inner resources so that they are not wasted in places where they will be crushed. To understand why selectivity matters, look at the way the human brain reacts to betrayal. When someone shows kindness and is repaid with harm, the brain's amygdala, which regulates fear, becomes hyperactive. At the same time, the prefrontal cortex, which helps regulate rational thinking, struggles to calm it down. The result is a heightened state of vigilance, sometimes lasting years. People who have been betrayed often say they feel like they are walking on eggshells in every new relationship. This is not just emotional poetry, it is biology. The brain literally shifts into a mode of hyper-awareness, scanning every word, every gesture for signs of future betrayal. Selective kindness is the antidote because it helps train the brain to distinguish between people who are safe and those who are not, creating new pathways of trust where it is earned and cutting off the old habit of giving to anyone without discernment. There is another dimension often overlooked, the energy of reciprocity. Human beings are wired for balance. The body expects that kindness will eventually be returned in some form, even if not immediately. When you give endlessly to someone who never reciprocates, the body begins to interpret the relationship as a form of injustice. Studies in social psychology reveal that humans experience imbalance in relationships as a stressor similar to physical pain. That is why people who are consistently taken for granted describe their feelings as being drained, hurt, or wounded. It is not just a metaphor. Their brains are literally responding to unreciprocated kindness as if they were physically injured. Selective kindness, then, is a form of wisdom. It is saying, "I will still be kind, but I will not let my kindness become my poison." There is no need to shut your heart completely, but there is every reason to choose carefully where it is poured. When you do, the science of your body responds with balance. The oxytocin that brings warmth is not mixed with cortisol that brings stress. The brain does not wire itself toward mistrust, but toward healthy discernment. Relationships that are chosen carefully bring energy instead of draining it. Consider how this plays out in daily life. A teenager in high school may try to befriend everyone, showing kindness to all in the hope of being accepted. Yet the more they give, the more some classmates take advantage, until the teenager feels invisible. When that teenager learns to give kindness only to those who treat them with respect, friendships begin to feel uplifting instead of exhausting. A young woman in college may constantly help roommates with favors, driving them places, cleaning up after them, paying for small things, until she notices resentment building inside her. When she learns selective kindness, she starts helping with joy when she chooses, but no longer when it is expected as a demand. Suddenly, the act of kindness feels fulfilling again, not draining. A man in his career may try to always please his colleagues, only to find that people keep piling tasks onto him. His body begins to show signs of stress, headaches, sleepless nights, fatigue. When he learns to protect his heart by giving wisely, he starts choosing moments to help and moments to say no. His health recovers, and his kindness remains a gift instead of a burden. scale, even communities thrive when kindness is selective. A neighborhood where people help one another with sincerity becomes strong and safe. A neighborhood where people exploit generosity quickly falls apart. The same principle applies to nations and cultures. Kindness must be rooted in justice, truth, and discernment, or it collapses under the weight of exploitation. The science of selective kindness does not call you to harden your heart, but to sharpen your vision. It is about recognizing that your kindness is like water. Too much water poured on barren ground will only be wasted, but when poured on fertile soil, it produces life. Protecting your heart means learning to see the difference. Neuroscience says your brain thrives when kindness is met with kindness. Psychology says your soul flourishes when boundaries are respected. Spiritual wisdom says love must be guided by truth. All these voices are speaking together, inviting you to live with balance. Think of the people who inspire the world most. They are not the ones who gave endlessly without thought. They are the ones who gave wisely, who learned when to open their hands and when to guard their hearts. They are the mothers who loved fiercely, but also taught discipline. They are the leaders who forgave much, but also confronted injustice. They are the friends who listened deeply, but also spoke truth when it was needed. Their kindness was powerful because it was selective. Kindness is one of the greatest strengths of the human spirit, but it was never meant to be blind. Too often, people grow up believing that being kind means being endlessly available, endlessly forgiving, endlessly giving without pause. But real kindness is not an open door with no locks. Real kindness is a sacred gift, and a sacred gift must be treated with wisdom. There is a saying in ancient texts, "Be as wise as serpents and as harmless as doves," which tells us that kindness without wisdom becomes weakness, while wisdom without kindness becomes cruelty. The balance of both creates a life of depth, strength, and peace. When we look at the life of great thinkers, leaders, and spiritual guides, we see this balance reflected again and again. They were gentle but not soft, patient but not foolish, generous but not blind. Jesus washed the feet of his disciples as an act of humility and love, but he also overturned the tables of money changers when the temple was defiled. That single act shows the world that kindness is not the absence of boundaries or strength. Kindness requires courage, and courage means knowing when to say yes and when to say no. Without that courage, kindness is not pure, is simply appeasement dressed in soft words. A wise life demands that we treat kindness like a lamp we carry into the world. If we place the lamp before people who cherish its light, they walk forward with us, guided and encouraged. If we place the lamp before those who despise it, they will break it, mock it, and leave us in the darkness with no flame left to guide ourselves. This is why living wisely with kindness means knowing that not every heart is prepared to receive it. Sometimes the most powerful act of kindness is restraint. Not silence out of fear, but silence out of wisdom. Not giving because of exhaustion, but choosing not to give because the soil is barren and the seed would be wasted. In psychology, there is evidence that people who know how to regulate kindness, who give wisely, live healthier, more balanced lives. Their stress levels are lower because they are not drained by toxic relationships. Their emotional energy is preserved for the people and causes that truly matter. Their confidence grows because they know their kindness is not being trampled on, and their self-respect deepens because they have drawn invisible lines that say, "This far and no further." On the other hand, those who hand out kindness without thought often face disappointment, resentment, and even bitterness. They expect that kindness will always return in equal measure, and when it doesn't, they feel betrayed. But in truth, the problem is not that kindness is unworthy, but that kindness was never meant to be poured into every cup without considering who drinks from it. When you study the human brain, you discover that kindness lights up regions associated with reward and connection. Oxytocin, the bonding hormone, rises when we give, making us feel good and safe. Yet, repeated betrayal or exploitation rewires the brain toward distrust and fear. The very act of giving, when done unwisely, creates a storm inside the mind that can lead to bitterness. What was once a joy becomes a source of pain. That is why living wisely with kindness is not just about protecting others, it is about protecting your own mind, your own soul, your own heart from the weariness of being used. Think about the seasons. Winter does not apologize for its cold, and summer does not apologize for its heat. Each has its time, and each has its purpose. Kindness is like the sun, but the sun does not shine with equal warmth on every corner of the earth at once. Some places are given more, some less, because balance must be maintained for the earth to thrive. If the sun gave endlessly without wisdom, it would scorch the earth to ashes. If it withheld all light, the earth would freeze. It is in the balance of giving and restraining that life flourishes. This is the same for the human heart. A heart that gives without balance burns out. A heart that withholds without balance grows cold. A heart that chooses wisely when to give and when to hold back creates life, beauty, and meaning. Living wisely with kindness also means recognizing that not everyone who asks deserves. A child who is never corrected will grow reckless. A friend who is never challenged will grow entitled. A loved one who is never told the truth will remain blind. True kindness sometimes looks harsh because it refuses to enable destruction. Saying no can be the highest form of love because it refuses to participate in someone's self-destruction. It is easy to hand out comfort, but it takes courage to hand out truth, and truth delivered with love is the deepest form of kindness that exists. When you look into the stories of people who change lives, you see that their kindness was never weakness. Martin Luther King Jr. spoke with compassion but carried a fire of justice that could not be silenced. Mother Teresa held the dying with tenderness, but she also stood firm against systems of neglect that allowed them to suffer in the first place. Their kindness was fierce, wise, and unshakable. They knew when to cradle and when to confront. That balance made their kindness powerful enough to shift nations and awaken hearts. On a personal level, each person must decide how to carry kindness in daily life. In families, kindness is not simply doing everything others demand, but creating a home where respect and love are mutual. In friendships, kindness is not letting others drain your energy without ever pouring back into you, but choosing relationships that grow you as much as you grow them. In workplaces, kindness is not letting others walk over your time and effort, but setting limits that say your dignity matters. In society, kindness is not ignoring injustice for the sake of peace, but standing boldly against what destroys humanity, even when it costs you. There's a saying that every act of kindness plants a seed in eternity, but seeds must be placed in fertile ground. If you pour them on stone, they wither, and your labor bears no fruit. Living wisely with kindness means searching for soil that can nurture growth, relationships that reflect mutual respect, and moments that truly matter. Is not about counting how much you give, but about noticing where your giving makes a difference. At times, you may fear that holding back kindness makes you unloving. This is not true. Holding back kindness from those who abuse it is not cruelty, it is clarity. It is choosing to honor the value of kindness so deeply that you refuse to let it be wasted. It is an act of reverence toward your own soul. The divine call is not to throw pearls before swine, but to walk with discernment, to protect what is sacred, and to live in truth. The world will try to tell you that being kind means being endlessly available, but wisdom whispers a deeper truth. Kindness is strongest when it is rare enough to be treasured and wise enough to be respected. If you give it to everyone without pause, people will grow numb to its value. But when you give it with intention, people feel its power, and it lingers in their memory like a blessing. To live wisely with kindness is to live with strength. It is to let your heart remain tender without letting it be trampled. It is to extend love without losing self-respect. It is to give freely but not foolishly. And when you find this balance, your kindness will not only heal others, it will heal you. It will not only light up the world, it will preserve your flame so you never run out of warmth. So guard your kindness like treasure, share it like light, and protect your heart with wisdom. For not everyone deserves your kindness, but the right people at the right time will see it, honor it, and let it change them forever. When you step back and look at life through the eyes of wisdom, you realize kindness is not just an act, it is energy, and energy is life. If you spend your life scattering it in places where it is crushed, mocked, or wasted, your soul begins to dim. But if you choose carefully where you plant it, your heart flourishes, and so does everything around you. There is both excitement and fear in that truth, because it reminds us that every act of kindness is a seed that either grows into a garden or turns into weeds that choke the spirit. The greatest wisdom is knowing that not everyone who smiles at you has earned the right to hold your trust. The strongest motivation comes from realizing that your heart is not an endless fountain. It is a sacred vessel that must be guarded. Even psychology confirms this. When you give to people who value you, your brain strengthens joy, but when you pour yourself into those who abuse it, your body responds with stress, your mind with fatigue, and your spirit with quiet despair. You are not called to be endlessly drained. You are called to live with power wrapped in grace. There is soul psychology in this journey. When you give to those who truly deserve it, your inner self feels light, your nights feel restful, and your spirit feels connected to something divine. But when you give to those who misuse it, your body stiffens, your sleep breaks, and your purpose feels lost. That is the silent warning life gives you, urging you to step back, urging you to protect the sacred flame inside. So stand with courage. Let your kindness remain fierce, but never foolish. Let your heart remain open, but not unguarded. Be the kind of soul who touches lives with truth, not just empty generosity. Protecting your heart does not make you cold, it makes you wise. Protecting your heart does not make you selfish, it makes you strong enough to love in ways that last. Protecting your heart means you finally understand that the divine spark inside you is never meant to be wasted on hands that only know how to break it. And when people look at you years from now, they will not see someone who is always drained, always used, always broken. They will see a person whose kindness carried weight, whose boundaries carried strength, and whose life carried meaning. That is the destiny of a heart that knows when to give, when to stop, and when to rise above.